All right, we're about to look at the Quran in a way you have probably never ever considered. We're not going to treat it as just a text, a book of stories. We're going to treat it as a living operational system. The whole idea we're exploring today is that the Quran actually functions like a piece of divine code, laying out the fundamental process of life, death, and our return. So, here it is, the central claim of this entire explainer, right up front. The Quran operates on the exact same fundamental logic as a chromosome, encoding the journey of our existence on a cosmic scale. This image you're seeing, it's meant to convey that grand scale. And let's be absolutely crystal clear about this. This is not a metaphor, it's not some poetic comparison. The claim is process identity, that the underlying mechanism is literally identical. We're saying the physics of spiritual transformation and the biology of our genes are, at their very root, the same system, just expressed in two different ways. So, if it's an operational system, how does it actually work? Well, let's start with what we can call the survival protocol. You see, in the Qur'an, you have these verses describing a camel, a fire, a needle, and softened iron. They seem like totally separate, isolated signs, right? But what if they aren't? What if they're actually one single continuous mechanism for transformation? Okay, let's break this protocol down. It all starts with the camel. You know how a camel can convert its dense fat into fluid water to survive the desert? That's the first law. In any crisis, density, think rigidity, ego, stubbornness, it has to become fluid and adaptable. Next up is fire. Fire is like a verifier. It tests the true reality of a thing. A system that's already become fluid can pass right through it. Third, the needle's eye. This isn't about impossibility, it's a compression gate. If you're fluid and adaptable, you pass through. If you're dense and rigid, you rupture under the pressure. And finally, you have iron. Authority, which iron symbolizes, only bends for the one who has made it through that fire. It's an outcome that has to be earned. So what's the ultimate payoff for going through this protocol? It's right here. My righteous servants shall inherit the earth. This isn't just a promise, it's the direct consequence of executing that four-stage process. See, it's a system built on function and transformation, not just blind belief. All right, so we've seen the core process, the software, if you will. Now let's zoom out and look at the full architecture, the hardware it runs on. Imagine a blueprint with two opposing strands, one driving everything towards life and the other pulling it towards decay. On one side, you've got the life strand. This is all about expansion, growth, manifestation. Think of that incredible lineage of prophets, Adam to Abraham to Musa. The divine message is building on itself, growing. But then on the other side, you have the death strand. This is the path of inversion, of decay, a sequence that leads to a dead end, represented by figures like Pharaoh. These two forces are always at play. In biology, our chromosomes have these tiny protective caps on the ends called telomeres, and every time a cell divides, they get a little bit shorter. When they're gone, the cell can't replicate anymore. It's the end of the line. Well, in this model, the same exact thing happens to a spiritual system that just refuses to reset and realign. It hits a point of telomere exhaustion, a permanent collapse, symbolized in the Quran by the story of the people of Lut. So, if you've got these two opposing strands, what holds them together? What controls whether they replicate or collapse? This brings us to the engine of the whole model, the centromere. Biologically, the centromere is that central point on a chromosome that's absolutely critical for cell division. In our Qur'anic chromosome, it's the singularity of choice that determines everything. So how does this cosmic decision point actually function? The claim here is pretty wild. Its operational logic is described perfectly by the sequence of 4 very specific chapters, or surahs, in the Quran. Let's actually look at that mapping. Just look at this table. It lays out a complete diagnostic and repair sequence. It kicks off with Surah 103, which states that humanity is in a state of loss. That's the diagnosis. The system detects tension. Then comes Surah 108, speaking of an abundance of grace. That's the repair signal, the intervention. That leads to Surah 110, which describes victory. The process of successful division is complete. And finally, Surah 112 affirms absolute oneness, which stabilizes the identity of the new viable system, the daughter cell, so to speak. So you see, this isn't just theology. The claim is that this is decision physics. The centromere presents a choice with very clear, very physical outcomes. If a system aligns with truth, it replicates, it continues. But if it's dominated by ego, well, it's just like those telomeres getting shorter and shorter. The system collapses into that inverted death spiral. Okay, so if the system has this built-in potential for collapse, for decay, is there a way to fix it? Is there a mechanism for renewal, for infinite continuation? According to this model, absolutely. And the solution is to understand the book itself as a type of biological enzyme. Let's jump back to biology for just a second. We talked about telomeres being these shortening fuses on our chromosomes. Well, our bodies have this incredible enzyme called telomerase that can actually rebuild them, allowing our cells to keep on dividing. The argument here is that the book, the Qur'an, does exactly this for our spiritual system. It isn't just something to be read. It's a living, restorative enzyme that extends the life of the system. This is the key. This is what makes the whole system sustainable. The book is what restores the system's potential for life. Without it, you get telomere collapse, system failure. But with it, you don't just survive, you become the next viable link in the chain. And this brings us right back to the beginning. This is why the protocol works. This is why iron softens. This is why the camel passes through the needle. This is why inheritance happens. The book is the enzyme that powers the whole process. So what's the final law of this system when you put it all together? It's a perfect closed loop. A state of life can fall into a state of death, of collapse. But the intervention of the book, acting as that renewal enzyme, allows for a total reset, leading right back to a renewed state of life. Let's just boil this entire model down to its three core truths. 1. The chromosome isn't a metaphor, it is the real structure of our existence. 2. The centromere isn't just biology, it is the physical mechanism of choice. And 3. The book isn't just text, it is the functional enzyme for renewal. And all of this entire analysis, it leads us to one final, unavoidable question. This is what turns this from a cool theory into a direct personal challenge. If this system, the spiritual genome, is already running inside of you, when are you going to stop just reading it as a text and actually decide to become its function?